Hello, everyone, and welcome to Create Above and Beyond. This is the second to last episode in the series, so we're going to get some really cool stuff done in this episode. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And for what we're actually going to do in this episode, I went ahead and updated our board here. So, I have testing facility, storage room, and food factory that we still want to do in our world. And then we have chaotic alchemy and chapter 4. And these are basically our two options for getting through to essentially chapter 5 and kind of like finishing up the mod pack. And in today's mega episode, we're going to try to get every single one of these items done in preparation of finishing the mod pack and getting to the moon. So we're just going to take a brief look at these and kind of see how involved they're going to be as far as actually getting these automated. So chapter 4, a new energy unit joins the ranks. The production facility for silicon will involve interpreting of thermal induction machinery. So that's using all of our thermal components we just made. Between flux and stress, a peculiar innovation in laser technology will be required to produce some of the ingredients involved. So we'll go ahead and check that off. We'll also go ahead and check chaotic alchemy. So you'll find that the newly discovered laser setup has other interesting capabilities. Behind a bit of science and experimentation lies the way to transmute seemingly unrelated materials to one another. The demanding silicon element is one of them, but which is the counterpart? So we'll go ahead and hit the check mark for that too, and also unlock that. So taking a look at chapter 4, looks relatively involved. So wood, coal, looks like we're making coal coke. Crushing that down, that should all be pretty simple. And then we need sand, ball of sand, coarse sand, crystal sand, which we need to go down this tier. We need to get hot laser, concentrated heat. That doesn't look too difficult, and looks like we have to go down and get Blizz mix kind of on like the other end. And looks like we just kind of process it down, and then it looks like we're getting into ME stuff, so that's actually quite interesting. And then I believe our chaotic alchemy, essentially you just like take all these different reagents and you can basically craft up a whole bunch of stuff. So like, okay, here's one. So you can take this obsidian reagent and make powdered obsidian. And then this obsidian reagent is made with Blazel reagent, fuchsia, and violet catalyst. So it looks like we can just basically use these to make a whole bunch of different stuff. I don't know quite how useful these are going to be just because we have our trade hall. So I don't know if we'll probably get into it a little bit if we want to make some of this stuff, but I don't know if we're going to get into it too deep. In the meantime, I think what we're going to do is we're going to move on to testing facility. And the whole point of the testing facility is just to kind of have a space where we can, when we're working on the new chapter, we can just kind of test stuff out. And it looks like that's going to be really useful for this chaotic alchemy stuff, because I think some of these might take a little bit of work to kind of figure out how exactly we want to build stuff. So what I'm going to do is, this has always been meant to kind of be where our testing facility would start. So we'd have kind of like a big dome here, and then it would kind of go back in this way into the mountains. So I'll get that set up and we'll get ready to put together a testing facility. All right, and here we are in our finished test facility. So it's finished, but it's not furnished. I do intend to add a lot more decoration in here, or at least in this spot here, where we have our really cool, like big dome observatory where we can kind of gaze out into all of our different builds so far in our little mega factory. And then coming over here, we have this really big open area where we have a create power coming through. Then I also set up a bunch of these new mystic dynamos and a flux coil, our flux cells, so that way we can actually test some thermal power and stuff. And I think this will be really helpful for us in terms of just testing stuff out. And then we also connected it out with some escalators to the rest of the base here, which I think I need to slow down because you can see me jumping on them a little bit. Going up works just fine. It's just going down doesn't really seem to help too much. But I have actually already made some use of this. So in going into chapter 4, we have some items that we need to essentially laser zap. So we have some information here about the alchemical laser. And essentially what this does is we need a laser lamp that's powered by an Invar machine, and then we slap it with a deployer, and it will laser whatever is in this hopper. So there's two things we need to laser. First, we need to laser basalt, and that gets us this basalt shards. And the other thing is we need to laser is these snowballs. And these give us these Blizz cubes. So with those two items, we basically need to crush and then compact them to get earth charges and ice charges. And then we use those to build our silicone. So our first step is going to be getting snowballs automated and getting our basalt automated. Okay, so talking about automation of these items, it's going to be relatively easy. Our basalt is going to be an igneous extruder with lava, blue ice, and then we just put soul sand below, gets us unlimited basalt. And our snowballs are just going to use the blast chiller, which we'll need to pump in water. That gives us 4 snowballs every once in a while. Now, I was taking a look at what these calculation mechanisms are actually used for, so that way I could plan out what our production actually needs to look like, and we're going to want a lot of these. So first, for ME storage, which I think is probably what we're going to end up doing in the long term, you need a bunch of these to make like the big storage devices, right? So it's definitely going to be worth getting lots and lots of these guys because we do need to upgrade them and get that going. The other thing is we do need to melt them down into liquefied logic, which now isn't too helpful, but pretty soon, once we start getting into the next chapter where we're actually doing maths to get to the moon, yeah, you got to do maths to get to the moon. I don't make the rules. But anyway, we are going to need a lot of those numbers. So what I think I'm going to do is we're probably going to start with 4 and 4 and see how that goes. And I believe our craft is we need like one of these to one of these. So we'll do 4 and 4 and kind of see where that gets us. And if that's balanced out, great. If not, we'll just kind of add a few more until we are balanced out. So I'm going to get these all crafted up and then we'll get it all set up and start hooking them up to, we're going to need power for this guy. This doesn't need anything special, but this guy is going to need both power and water hooked up to make the snowball. So we're going to get that going. All right, so I've gathered everything we need to kind of get this going in this barrel here. And I figured this would be a good spot as any to kind of build it because we've had this, I think this is like chapter 2.5 factory that's just kind of been not connected to anything else. So I figured we could kind of use this, maybe kind of bridge up to our chapter 3 factory and then down to like the main part. But to get started, we're first going to start with our igneous extruders, which should be really actually quite simple because all we need is to place down our soul soil. So we have 4 of those. Above that, our igneous extruders. Then we'll just use cobblestone for now. We'll make it look pretty later. And then lava, and I think this works with flowing lava, but it's going to look better with full blocks. And then in front, we're going to place our blue ice. And now, yep, look at that. We're producing basalt. Now, what I'm actually going to do is space these out so it's like we can pull out items with belts. But that's the idea behind those. So I'll get those all hooked up to belts and have stuff pumped out. I'm also probably going to throw in our most upgraded augment because it speeds it up and doesn't cost energy, so there's really no reason not to. Now, our blast chillers are going to be a little bit trickier because we need both power and water inputted. So if we space these out by a block, so it'll be like 1, 2, 3, and then 4 would be here. So maybe we'll throw our first blast chiller here. We don't really need to space these out, but I think that actually fills up the wall quite nicely. So we'll do that. And then we need to put these ball casts inside of the chillers, like so. And then I need to hook up power and water. So we'll grab some pumps and some pipes. And this should be relatively simple. Just do something like that. We'll hook up this pump to power, going down into a water source. So we got our infinite source there. We want to throw a pump there and then a pipe here. And then when that's powered up, that should supply water to all 4 of these. Don't need a pipe there. And now we need power, which we'll just kind of throw going over the top here. And then we do still need to actually produce infinite power. For now, I'll probably just throw a few new mystic dynamos at the end here to kind of get them powered up. And then once we get our water going, we should be producing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook these up to belts as well. And then we're just going to kind of see how quickly these produce and if we need to adjust, add, or remove any. Actually, we're not going to remove. If we need to add any, either igneous extruders or blast chillers, we'll do that until they're kind of like balanced out and we're getting an even number of both. And then we will process them down into our earth charges and snow charges. Okay, so based on my very, very scientific calculations on basically putting stuff in drawers, we can see that our snowballs are filling up quite a bit faster. Now, I did upgrade these with our augments, and actually they're going faster than our belts can handle. We could speed that up with some brass funnels, which I'm probably going to try, but first I just want to see if speeding these up with our reinforced augments make the basalt keep up. And if these are stacking up, which they are, that means it's at least keeping up. So let's swap these for brass funnels so that we can take out more than one at a time. And hopefully that kind of balances them out pretty well. And my honest hope is that because these are both like thermal series components, they would be kind of like balanced in terms of output. No idea if that's true or not, but hey, a man can hope. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think what I need to do is, if I just leave these at default, these are still going to fill up because we're only pulling one out at a time. So I think what I need to do is set these to 16. Actually, probably do half a stack should be able to keep up. So we'll do 8, and then we'll do 32 on the basalt. Okay, so now we're going to empty these both out one more time. And we're going to see if our counts match up to what we're expecting. Now it's going to be tricky to get these both empty at the same time, but it should be possible. Okay. Okay, so we're about the same. So 62, 80, 90, 100. It seems like we're pretty close. It seems like the basalt is maybe a tad bit faster. But I think we're close enough that we can let it run as is. Yeah. Oh, actually, no, it seems like our snowballs are significantly faster. It just took a bit to kind of start catching up. So, yeah, we're actually full on snowballs already because they only stack up to 16. And our basalt just kind of caught up. So, I think what we'll do is we'll throw one more basalt generator on here and run with our 4 snowballs, and we'll be close enough. You know, it won't be exactly 1-to-1, but I think we can live with that. I think we can live with just being close as reasonably possible. Okay, so we're going to do one more test. So we're going to empty these out. I added one more of our igneous extruders. Going to get these down to 0, and we'll just kind of watch until they get to like 512, because that's where this one maxes out. We can't really go any further. So far, well, they seem pretty in line, you know, like within 10 items. This one's a little behind, but that's because it's only exporting at 32 items, so it's always, not always, but it's going to be behind for a while. 256, oh, it's still quite behind. You know what we might be able to do? Because, yeah, I think this one just is running behind. Yeah, it's already at 512, this one's at 380. Maybe we can take an augment out of this guy, and instead, we didn't throw one on the end here, so maybe if we do that, and I'll just kind of mess with like removing augments from our chillers until we can kind of dial in so that way they're really close to each other. I'd like to see it like hit 512 within like 20, 30 items instead of like 100, 200 items. So we'll empty that out one more time and we'll see what we get. Okay, so this one seems to be a lot closer. You can see our basalt just jumped way up. That's because it was behind our snowballs. So you can see we're at like 300 and 300 roughly, 400, and there we just hit like 500. And these should hit 412, or sorry, 512 pretty quick. See, 480 and 480, we're actually one-on-one. This hit 512, then immediately this hit 640. So maybe this is a little bit faster, but you know what? I'm happy with that. They're at least close enough where I think it makes sense to continue on to build the rest of our line, and we will just store the extra of whatever one that we're producing more of. Wouldn't hurt to have basalt or snowballs. I think they're both a nice little item to have. Now, the tricky thing is we now need to feed these into a minecart. And if we jump down to our test facility here, We need to feed it into a minecart, but we also need to either give it the entropy manipulator for our snowballs or the fluxomagnet for our basalt. Now, the problem with those is they've got to be charged. So we have to put them into the energetic infuser, take them out, put it into a minecart, put in whatever we're using, and then power our laser, right? Which actually won't be too bad because we just have to hit it with a fist. We have to export both of these, feed our magnet back into the energetic infuser, and then back over into our minecart. So not the easiest thing to do, but also not too difficult. And I actually think I have a pretty good way of doing this. So I'm going to gather some resources together and we can kind of build a little test, I think, in here just to kind of get our idea down on paper and make sure that it works. And then once we have something that we like, we'll go back up and we will build it for real. And assuming it's good, then we can just kind of move on to literally crushing and pressing, and that all should be pretty quick. So let me go gather some materials so we can test out our little cart system. Okay, so tests were actually really successful. This actually shouldn't be too hard. So essentially what we're going to want to do is use these more minecarts loaders and unloaders. And what this does is it pushes items into the minecart or pulls out, depending if you're using a loader or unloader. So if I go ahead and fill up our loader, you can see that it put a bunch of items in the minecart and also sent it off. So you can set redstone activity to on. So essentially, we'll test this out one more time so you guys can kind of see it in action. The second that the minecart fills up, it automatically gets sent off. So if I go ahead and give this guy a push, you can see it fill up and then get sent. Now we will also need a controller rail somewhere in the middle of our circuit, so that way we can stop it and zap it and then send it on its way. But once we do that, we can use a minecart unloader. It will go to the minecart unloader, unload all the items, and then send it off again. So this is pretty straightforward. The one thing we do need to figure out is the fluxomagnet. So we can pull it out of here. That's no problem. We can just filter it out. Now, as far as putting it in, I think what we're going to have to do, so that way we make sure this actually goes in, is probably use a content observer. And what we're going to want to do is have a belt system where when the fluxomagnet or our energy manipulator pass a content observer, then it would send in 1, 2, 3, 4 stacks of basalt. So that should actually be relatively easy. We just need like 4 funnels or chutes locked that unlock for a second when we see the fluxomagnet go past, send all of it into the minecart loader, and then basically this will be fully loaded up and then automatically be sent off. So that's all pretty straightforward, and I think it shouldn't be too hard to actually put together. So I'm going to start working on connecting all of this up, getting our system set up. We will need 2 of these, one for our ice and one for our basalt, and I think that we'll pretty easily be able to keep up with our production, and if not, we can always probably just add another line. So without any further ado, let's get building. All right, so after a little bit of messing around, I think we actually got a design that's going to work really well for us. So essentially what we're doing is we added a second one of these cart loaders. So we have one that loads our magnet and a second one that loads all of our basalt, which we're feeding in through the back. Then our cart goes over here. We have a controller rail just to kind of slow it down, and then a constantly flickering laser. The laser hits it, turns it into our shards, goes through this belt. We collect the shards here. Magnet goes back through our infuser, back into the first loader, and then it just kind of goes around forever. And so far, this has been working really good. You can see there was some testing to kind of get everything worked out, like the speed of this rail. But yeah, this is definitely working. So now the next step is we gotta do our snowballs as well. So what I'm gonna do is just build the same piece just like above it, and then we'll feed our snowballs up over into there, and we'll be ready to crush these up and get our fire and snow charges ready to go. Okay, so we finally got this all set up. So we built our second layer to make our Blizz cubes. And then of course we have our basalt shards. So you can see our little carts just kind of moving around, picking up their stuff, getting zapped, and then moving back. And we're actually fully able to keep up. I was a little worried that we wouldn't be able to keep up with the speed we're producing these, but we're keeping up just fine. It is not a problem. So next step, we're just going to take these, crush them, press them, and we'll pretty much be done. Okay, so we got our 2 crushing and pressing lines set up. So with this, we should be fully set up. So it's going to crush them down. We're going to get them. It's going to press them out. And then here we go. We got our ice charges and we got our earth charges. So we'll let those build up. So technically, I think we can actually check all of these off because we have actually got all of these automated. So we're going to want to go ahead and grab some of each of the charges. And we're also going to want to grab some of these powders so we can check those off. And then we can come in here, say, yes, these are all automated. And I mean, that's a good amount. So we probably, if we're just looking at space, which isn't necessarily how we want to take a look at this, but we're probably like 2/6 of the way there. So kind of like a third of the way through chapter 4. So we're going to jump right into automating down our earth charges and ice charges in together to get silicone. Now, our earth charges, we need to essentially automate 2 things. The first is sand, because we need these sand chunks and this fine sand, which we get from sand balls, which we get from washing sandstone. So that's all relatively straightforward. And then we also need these coke chunks to get the silicone compound. And these coke chunks are gotten from washing some coal coke, which there are a few different ways to get this, but pretty much we just need to pyrolyze some sort of coal. So I think we're going to start with our sand, and then we'll go ahead and move on to working on our coal coke. And yeah, it should be pretty straightforward. We just need wood, charcoal, which gets us our coke, which gets us our coke chunks. And then we also have our sand around here. And we'll just combine those all together, combine it with our earth charges and our ice charges. And I think we'll end this episode by getting our silicone fully automated. Okay, so I think we're going to start with these coke chunks because I think they'll be a little bit easier to automate than our sand stuff. Now, for actually processing the coke into chunks, we just need to wash it a bunch and cut it a bunch. That's not a problem. Now, to get our actual coke, we do need charcoal. We need to feed it into a pyrolyzer. Now we are going to get creosote oil, which can be used as power in a compression dynamo. So we could potentially use it, but I don't really think we need to. So I think we're just going to end up using this nullifier to basically void it out. Now we have an unlimited supply of charcoal from our power plant. So all I'm going to do to get our charcoal going is we're going to throw an ender chest here, give it a unique color, throw a chute on there, and that will fill up with coal. And then we're going to take another chest, dyed black, 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 and we can have infinite charcoal down in our factory. So I'm going to set up a simple little line to process this down into our coal coke, process it down into coal chunks, and then we'll pretty much be half the way there. We just got to do all of our sand automation. But first, we've run out of space here, so we need to clear a little bit more room. Right, we've got a really nice amount of space cleared out here right by our factory, which we can then use to build up the rest of what we need. And actually, right above this little ceiling here, this is where our chapter 3 factory is, so that'll be really easy to connect down to here, and then we can eventually connect it down to our main base. So we're getting pretty close to actually having everything connected up. Now, when I was clearing this out, I noticed we have run into an issue. So you can see our system is backed up here, and that's because we actually ran out of power for our energetic infusers, which basically meant stuff couldn't charge. So we had to take a little bit of a break and get all these new Mystic Dynamos all powered up. Now for this, I'm going to be a little bit lazy, and instead of like going ahead and making a central power unit, I think what we'll do is just connect these up with some ender chests. And I think actually we have to dye these first because otherwise they're going to get full of stuff. So I'm going to dye these with gray and basically just send coins on through them. We can just pump coins out from our basement and then just power up every dynamo we have with a ender chest. And I think that'll be a really nice and easy way to do it. Now ender chests are a little bit expensive, so we'll just do something like that. And so that should, once we actually get this hooked up down below, that should automatically funnel our coins in. And And then we're going to do another one over on this side, like so. And then we'll go connect up our coins. Ooh, I hope this isn't bedrock down below. Oh, it is. That's fine. We can just, we can do a hopper then. So we'll do our, oh, that's a white, white, white. We want to grab the one with the gray. So we'll do that there, and then we'll squeeze a hopper behind, like so. And that's going to fill up with coins, and we should be able to pump out quick enough. If not, we can just do a belt out of here, but we should be good to go now with power. All right, and there we go. I emptied out this little backup here, and we're running again. So as you can see, we've already collected 2048 of each of these, so we're cooking pretty fast. Now it's time to, I guess, grab our coal, which is going to be this black, black, black ender chest, and we need to feed this through a pyrolyzer. All right, so this should be pretty simple. So we get our pyrolyzer, we get our ender chest above that, so that gets our charcoal. Now we need a belt coming out the side here. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we're doing one item at a time. So an andesite funnel is all we need. And the process is just going to be wash, saw, and then we need another belt here where we can do a wash, and then we need a final saw. And then finally, that gets us our chunks, which then these will go into a basin. And we'll just throw a chest here temporarily, and then once we kind of know where our sand is going to be, we can just have this belt on over to it. So now we just need these two hooked up to water. We need this hooked up to power. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to grab our nullifier, and we'll need to pump our creosote oil out of our pyrolyzer and into our nullifier. So we'll just throw that there, and that should be our system. So I'll get this all hooked up to power, and we'll test it out and make sure it works. And that worked great. So we've got our pyrolyzer making the coke, then it gets washed, sawed, and we get our coke chunks at the end here. Now, one thing I did notice is this goes pretty slow, and I don't think the speed of that is going to necessarily keep up with the speed of our earth charge and ice charge production, because as you can see, these go pretty quick. So I guess if it's not, maybe we'll just go ahead and upgrade this with more augments. Hopefully that works. If not, we can always add another one of these lines. It's very simple to make, and our design here is actually tileable. I could just like throw like another 3 of these on here and it won't be a problem. So probably what we'll do is I'll do my little test again here where I just make sure that this keeps up. And if it doesn't, then we will just tile it 1 or 2 more times until we get it balanced out. All right, so this thing is slow. So we got half a stack of coal chunks. In the time, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 stacks of earth charges. So we'll call that 5.5 to a half stack of coal chunks. So that means we need 11 pyrolyzers to keep up. That's too bad. That's quite a bit. So we can craft these upgraded integral components, which is 4x instead of 3x. So that should make it 25% faster, which means we would need, if I'm doing my math correct, 8.8 pyrolyzers. The other thing I can try is I know stacking these in some of our other machines didn't work, but I am going to try it in this one because maybe it does. So I think I'm going to grab one of each one of these upgrade components, throw them all in there, and see if it upgrades itself that many times. So we're going to grab that, test it out. If that doesn't work, then we'll just, I think, probably have to throw a bunch more on that assembly line. Okay, so we've got it set up here. I figured we would just belt it over. There's really no need to build 8 of these because I think our little line here will easily be able to keep up. In the meantime, we are waiting for more signalium to build these up. So while we wait, let's get started on crafting up our sandstone. So my plan was to do sandstone and wash it, but that's a 12% chance to get balls of sand. We can just use this fluid encapsulator, and then it's 1 sand to 1 ball, which will be a lot better. It will require some energy, but we can totally build this machine. That's easy. So I guess we'll actually use that recipe. So all we need is sand, which I figured we could get from some igneous extruders. And we'll just need 2 sets of crushing wheels, which I guess I have to go grab. And the way I actually grab those these days is kind of funny. Instead of crafting them up, I just come over here to our chapter 3 factory, and I come to our crafting, and I come to our crushing wheel crafter, pop this off, and just let them craft up for myself. So I'll grab those, we'll go down there, and then we will hook up we'll start with 2 igneous extruders and see if that keeps up. It probably should, because it's 1 ball of sand gets us 1 earth charge, and I think 2 igneous extruders will go pretty quick for us. All right, so we got all of our pyrolyzers installed, which is now cranking out our coal coke. We are getting lots and lots of this going. We also went ahead through 2 igneous extruders, going through crushing wheels to get sand. We're also filtering out our flint and clay into a void upgraded drawer. That is then going into our fluid encapsulator, which is making our balls of sand. And those are going to be coming out of here, roll over the item drain, and then into our induction smelter. Because after they go over the item drain, we're going to get these sand chunks and this fine sand. Sand chunks we need to smelt up. Now the other thing we need with the sand chunks are these earth charges. So I think what we're going to do is just pull a real simple belt system over the top, and then we'll pull it out to there. I think we want to go like right above it. Because then what we can do is we can just kind of come all the way out to the end and then throw some chutes going all the way up. So do something like that. We want to go 1 lower. That. Always make sure to put a block at the end. Now that we have this set up, the last thing we need to do is take our fine sand, it's going to be purified sand out of here, and these coal coke chunks that we're crafting, and we need to feed those all into a press, which will get us our silicone compound. And then we just need to smelt that with an ice charge to get our silicone. So I'm going to get the rest of that set up. It should be pretty straightforward. And then we'll figure out if you want to go any further with the silicone or maybe start working on decorating this place. I guess we'll kind of see how much effort it takes to get that all finished up. All right, so we've got our silicone compound being crafted up. Now our very last step is to go ahead and grab our ice charges from over here. So we will hook that guy up. All right, so with that hooked up, we will throw a funnel there, which will start pulling out our ice charges. And now we do need to power this guy up. And I believe we have flux ducts running underground here. So we'll just pull that out. And then up. Like so. And we'll speed this up. Why not? And there we have our first piece of silicone. So what this is going to be used for now is we do need to deploy it with this silicone circuit scrap, which we can craft up some Invar and an inscriber press. Now I'm not sure where we first get these. Okay, so meteorites, that's what it is. So those meteorites do spawn around, and so it looks like we need to go break down one of those so we can get our first one, and they just kind of be duplicated after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our quest book. So chapter 4, we've done sand, we've done sand balls. Let's see, what do we need to do for this one? Pick up a sand chunk. That should be easy enough. I believe they're in this guy here. So we can grab that. All right, let's pick up charcoal. Okay, there we go. That's completed. So then we can check that off. Perfect. We need to go pick up a ball of sand, which then gets that checked off. And then we'll pick up a sand chunk, which gets that guy checked off. And a coal coke. Let's see if we can catch one before it goes in. Okay, we got that checked off. And then our chunks, which we can grab from... Sorry, not that one. We want to grab it from... We can just grab right from here. So we check off coal chunks and this sand. Purified sand. Check. Now this isn't unlocked because... Why? Oh, because we didn't check off liquefied sand, which we've done. and the merge. So we're going to grab one of those, which we can then check that off. And our silicone, we have that fully automated. Ooh, looks like we've hit our power limit. So we would have it fully automated if we were producing enough power, but we can go ahead and check that off because it is fully automated. So upgrading our power, looks like these new Mystic Dynamos are not keeping up. We'll just go ahead and throw resonant upgrades in there, which should speed them up hopefully enough to keep up. And it looks like output is still 100%, which means it is not enough. So we'll have to throw some more new Mystic Dynamos in here and kind of make sure that we're powered up. So we'll just go ahead and double these. So we'll put 4 more in there, get those hooked up to our coin chest, and then we should have enough power to run this whole system. Okay, so I did what I probably should have done a long time ago, and I moved our power because I just really covered up the blast chillers completely, and I do like to have those, kind of exposed. So we went ahead and moved it just behind our little minecart contraptions there. So we now have enough power to run this whole system, no problem. And I think at this point, I want to take some time and decorate what we built. I know we have more to do, but honestly, because we're going to be making these printed silicone and there's some different actual boards we can make with these logic processors, the calculation processors, and these engineering processors, as well as our actual calculation mechanisms, I think I want to leave a space for that and just kind of have it separated from the rest. So I'm going to take some time, decorate this up, and hopefully we'll get a pretty cool looking building when it's all said and done. And here is our finished decoration, and it looks really good from outside. We really kept this little curve going into the mountain really nicely, and it really blended in quite well. And then on the inside, it doesn't look too dissimilar from our other spots in this factory, but I think it looks pretty good. Everything is laid out and flowing through. We've got nice little decoration, and it feels a lot nicer to kind of just have this all buttoned up and prepare to take our silicone and kind of process it down into what's next. So our next step is to print the silicone, which is done using a inscriber silicone press. Now, these little presses can actually be found in the middle of these meteorites. So there's these skystone meteorites that you can kind of find all over the world. I went ahead and just winded 2 of these, and they all have chests in the center of them where you can find these presses. And now one really nice thing we can do is if we just use some Invar and craft it up, we get the circuit scrap. So we can turn 1 press into 2 scrap, and then we can turn that scrap into any one of the presses. So I just collected 6 of these presses, which we're then just gonna scrap out, and then we can turn into whatever we want. Basically just have unlimited presses just from these 3. So that was a pretty easy part of the project. I was expecting to have to collect a bunch of each, but being able to duplicate them is gonna be really, really nice. Okay, so we can go ahead and take our press, take our Invar to get our scrap, and then the first one we need for the silicone is our inscriber. So we're gonna come over here to our saw, grab a inscriber silicone press, and we have that done. So that was easy enough. We can then go up to our production line, throw it on a deployer, and start crafting up our circuits. All right, so that was actually real easy to set up. All we have is a funnel coming out here into an ender chest, because once we have it crafted up, there are 3 different things we can craft it into, which is our calculation processor, engineering processor, and logic processor. And then it's also an ingredient for our calculation mechanism. But either way, we got this going, so I can just go ahead and throw a funnel on the end there, and then grab our inscriber silicone press, throw it on there, and we now have our printed silicone. Now, the next step is just taking this printed silicone and turning into the 4 different things that it could turn into, which are the 3 different processors and then our calculation mechanism. We'll start with this one, and then we'll work on the other 3 of these. So first we need to set up a line where we have our printed silicone above. Then we also need to craft up a flash drive. Ooh, hold on, I didn't know this needed a logic processor. So actually, I think we're going to start with these other 3 processors. So the first step is we need to print each of these by having the molten ingredient going into the correct inscriber press. So for our calculated circuit, we need the calculation press. For our engineering circuit, we need the engineering press, and for our logic circuit, we need the logic press. That's pretty straightforward, and we have plenty of those. So I'm going to go ahead and set up, I think we can probably do a single melter. I don't really see any reason to do multiple. So we'll set that up to melt down our gold, diamonds, and copper, and set up a place where we can pull it off and then get our printed circuits. Now, I'm probably at the same time also going to set it up so that way we can put redstone in to get destabilized redstone, because after we print them, we do need destabilized redstone to actually craft them up. So we'll probably want a pretty large melter, so I will go get the ingredients for that, and we'll get that set up. Okay, so I've got all the smeltery stuff we're going to need. So we're going to need a controller, and then we're going to need a chute to input all of our items, and then I think we need 6 drains. We need, actually, I take that back. I think we only need 4. So we need 3 for each of the different circuits, and then we need 1 for our destabilized redstone. And I think we're going to want those kind of high up because that's going to go into some spouts that are going to be up above belts. So may as well start over here. I don't see why not. So we will have our seared chute here, then put a hopper here. And we'll want a barrel above there. So this will be our input here. So then we can just kind of come over here, and I think we'll have our output right next to it. So we'll have our 3 casting tables, and we'll space these apart by 1, I think, just because we're going to have belts coming out here for the actual production lines of the items. So we can come over like that, and then we need drains above each one of these, and our faucets. So that's all pretty straightforward. Now the next thing we're going to need is a final drain above all of this. And I guess we'll just put it right in the center. I don't see why not. And this will pull out our destabilized redstone. So I think this is going to be all we need to set this up. We're producing lava just over here, so we can very easily pipe it behind everything. And so we'll just kind of have that coming in through the wall. But I think this is going to be all we need to get this together. So this is going to be certainly overkill as far as size goes, but it's nice to have everything kind of laid out how we want it. So I will get this all put together with our seared bricks, get the lava pumped on over, and we'll go ahead and test it out and make sure everything works as intended. All right, so I ended up finishing up their smeltery, and it's kind of funny because it looks huge, right? But it's only 1 block deep, but it still counts as a valid smeltery, so happy with that. Now, I did look this up because I remembered it being a problem, and it is. For melting our diamonds, we actually need blazing blood, not lava. So I actually need to set up a second smeltery where we can just power it with lava, and we need to melt blaze rods down into blazing blood. So we're going to pump in some lava from over there and some blaze rods from our coin system, and we'll set up a little piece here that'll melt it down so that way we can fill this tank up with blazing blood and keep our smeltery going. So once that's done, I'll bring you guys back in and we'll take a look at it all up and running. Okay, so our smeltery is set up. Now we do need to come over here and grab 1 of each of these presses, and I accidentally crafted all of them. Okay. I guess we'll start with our calculation press, and if that works, we can assume the rest are going to work as well. So in here, I can just go ahead and dump our stuff, and that'll get smelted down up. We have this smelter here, which we can put blaze rods into, which will get us our blazing blood. And you can see our gold is smelting up. And if we went ahead and threw in our diamonds instead, just want to make sure that that also melts down. And sure enough, it does. So now we can throw our calculation press on here. And like I said, I'll craft the other 2 up shortly. Hit this, fills up with copper, our printed circuit. So there we go. Our calculation circuit is now crafted up. So we'll put the other two presses in here and throw some levers on top of these. So that way they are just working all the time. So now all we need to do is feed this up into a deployer. So we can then deploy it onto some silicone with the redstone and then press it, and then we get our processors. So I'll get this all finished up and we should be good to move on to automating chapter 4 and getting that fully complete. Okay, and here it is. And that was a quite little fun project to hook up. So one thing I did have to do is I did replace our seared drains with seared ducts, because the seared ducts can actually be filtered out. So we can have our copper, our gold, and our diamond all going at once, as well as our redstone. So this has been working pretty well. So they come out here, they go over this belt, and then into a deployer. Then back here, I've got this ender chest with our printed silicone, which then comes down below there. Then it gets hit with the destabilized redstone and then pressed, and then we get our printed circuits. So we've got our logic processors, our calculation processors, and our engineer processors all being fully automated, which is really cool to have. Now, I am leaving this as a manual process because I don't think we need infinite of these. We need a lot, but we don't need infinite. So like, for instance, right now, I do have to go throw some more redstone in here because we did run out quite quickly, but really shouldn't be too big of an issue because all we really needed was a single logic processor. So that way we can make our flash drive and actually start crafting up some calculation mechanisms and get through chapter 4. And here it is, the end of chapter 4, our last little mechanism set up. So all we need to do is throw our inductive mechanisms in here. They'll get pressed twice with our printed silicone. And then the last step is to use the flash drive. However, we're going to jump into the market tab of the quest book because we can go ahead and upgrade this to be indestructible, like so. And then now what I can do is when I give it to this guy, we'll never have to go ahead and replace it. And we will start producing our calculation mechanisms. And we are now into chapter 4, or fully complete with chapter 4, I should say, and into chapter 5. So let's go ahead and check off the rest of these. Looks like we'll probably have to run around and grab stuff. You know the drill by now, so I'll go ahead and do that. And we'll take a look at what might be next. All right, and here we go. Our first ME controllers crafted up. And that's great. So we can go ahead and collect these little rewards. And then, oh, we've done this too. We just got to go grab them and check them off. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now, did I actually need to craft multiple of these? I did. Okay, so they are used for quite a few different things. So I think we're just going to go ahead and bank these all for now. We'll go complete our quest, clean everything up, and then come back and figure out what we're going to work on next. Okay, so back in the overview tab, next step is divide by digital, which is the finale. So we're going to work on that in the next episode. We're going to leave that for now. Chapter 4, we're through all of that. Now, chapter 4A is definitely worth at least going into, just trying to figure out how it works, and we'll see if it's worth it to go ahead and craft all these up. So I will be working on that today, but I think first, now that we have ME stuff unlocked, I think we're going to go ahead and set up a ME storage system. I think it's absolutely going to be the way to go because we'll be able to automatically pull and put items into barrels like this and just kind of connect everything up. So first I'm going to clean this up, finish the build here, clean out my inventory and this project, and then we'll figure out where we're going to put a storage room and get that set up. All right, so now I think we're ready to go. I went ahead and crafted up everything I think we're going to need, and I think we'll just go ahead and put it right here, kind of where we have our little setup. I think this is as good a place as any. So the first thing we need is a ME drive where we're going to store everything, and then our ME controller, and then we need a cable on top of this with a crafting terminal, which allow us to access what's in here. And then I crafted up a bunch of these 4K drives. I figured that would be a good place to start. We could always upgrade or add more of these drive bays if we need to. So now the last thing we need to do is power up our ME controller. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that with a new Mystic Dynamo, which we'll place right here. Then above that, we're going to do a chute. And then above that, we're going to do a ender chest that has coins. So that should go down and power us up. And we now have a ton of storage. And I can just go ahead and start dropping all my items in here. So this is fantastic. This will be absolutely great. Now the next step is just to move everything over here, and then we'll work on making it wireless. And I don't know about you guys, but one of my more favorite things to do in Minecraft is just moving storage rooms. And while I really like it when you have to like restart everything into stuff, what's even nicer is when you have automatic sorting or a system like this where you just get to literally dump it all in. It's a lot of fun. It's tedious, but you just throw a show on in the background and it's a nice little project to work on. And actually what I might do is probably just break out the wall of this train, because essentially this is where all of our storage is. So yeah, I think that's the game plan, is to blow this out, empty it out, and we should pretty quickly be good to go. And sadly, that wasn't enough space. So the red means that we're fully full on that drive. The orange means we filled out every one of the 63 types of items, but we haven't filled up the actual storage. And the blue means that we only have a few of the types, but we're getting right up on it. So we 29 of 33 types. So this just isn't enough storage for all the different types of items that we have. So we're going to have to make another ME drive and another set of 4K storage drives. And honestly, if we don't have enough 4Ks, I'll just do 1Ks, because we don't really need the 4Ks necessarily. We can probably get away with 1Ks, but either way, I'm going to craft that up and we'll be right back to organizing this all. And the other thing I'm going to do when I finish is kind of clean up a little bit. Like, we don't need all of these individually named pieces of paper taking up space. We also don't need a bunch of bows with different durabilities. So once we get some more drives and we clean this up, I think we should be in a pretty good spot here. And we got it all set. So we filled up our ME system. We got tons of items and it's fantastic. Now you might be wondering why we needed to upgrade, and there's two main reasons. First, just having it in a central location is going to be great. The second is with the old system, with the pretty pipes, we had to select an item and then request it, and then it would get sent over. Here, all we have to do is click it and then immediately pull it into our inventory, which is super nice. We can even like shift click stuff over and shift click stuff directly in. No more sending and requesting stuff. The other really nice thing is, let's say we want to make a crafting table. What you can do is you can automatically click this, put the items in, and then it'll take them out, and it works seamlessly. And then when you run out of a specific item, you can just request more, and you don't have to request them, and it just kind of automatically fills it in, which is really nice. The other cool thing is, if you are missing materials, when you go to like select the item you want to craft, so let's say you want to craft a spawn egg, it'll highlight the items in red, what will be missing, and it'll basically skip those from bringing those in. So that's just a little bit easier way of doing things than having to request it and then them not having it. So yeah, I'm really happy with this new system, and it's going to be pretty great. Now, the third reason, and probably the greatest reason for getting this set up, is going to be wireless access, which is what we're going to set up now. Okay, and after a little bit of crafting, I got everything we need to hook this up. So the first thing I need is a security terminal, which we can just throw down here, hooked up to our ME controller. And then we're going to drop our wireless terminal in here, I think. Think that worked? Yep, so that should be linked now. And then we need this wireless access point, which we're just going to hook up there. And then the last step is we need to charge this guy up, which I think works like that. Yes, so that did put some energy in it. So now if we right click this, we have access to everything from anywhere in our base, at least. I don't know the range on this. I suppose we can check that by going to the nether to just check if it's infinite, which fingers crossed that it is. Oh, and it is out of range. So that's a bummer that it is not infinite, but at least in our base, I'd imagine that this is going to work. And this is going to save hours of time just running back and forth down to my crafting grid down on the train. I can be anywhere and just pull stuff up and search for what I need. This is fantastic. So I'm gonna drop this in here, let it charge up, which probably isn't a good idea because when I do that, it sucks up all the energy and then our drives turn off. But realistically, I can just drop it here while I go work on a project, come back and grab it in a little bit. And I mean, and it stores quite a bit of energy, so I'm not too worried about this running out anytime soon. So with that complete, we can come back here and check off storage room. And we didn't really build a storage room per se, but hey, we got storage together and we've got a really nice system. Oh, is this really out of range? That can't be right. Did it turn itself off? No, our range is really limited. Hang on. I don't want to call that complete then if our range is like 30 blocks. Let me do some research and see if we can make this a bit better. Okay, so all I need to do to increase our range is craft up some of these wireless boosters. So I think those would go in here. No, they would go in our spot down here maybe. Okay, let me figure out where these actually go. Oh, in here, in our wireless access point. Okay, so we can actually get a lot of these then. We'll just craft up as many as we can. Okay, sweet. So that'll actually tell us a range 298 meters. And I don't see any reason not to max this out. Ooh, other than power. Okay, so that is potentially, well, I wouldn't say potentially, that is definitely a problem. So I honestly think what we need to do then is hook up a lot more of these dynamos to the system because I definitely want to have a whole stack of wireless boosters in here. And I also definitely need to be able to charge my terminal while keeping this running. So I guess what we're going to do is build a bit bigger of a power system and max this out. And then I think we can call our storage room complete. I've upgraded it quite a bit. I have a lot of power going on, but I've kind of given up because the mod is stupid. So essentially what this does is you can see each one adds the same amount of range, but the actual like AE use per tick, which is like the energy use, is not linear. It's like exponential. So you can see like at first we're just adding a few AE per tick, but then when you get up to like 56, now we're adding like almost 1,000 AE per tick. And I mean, the further you go, the worse it gets. So it's really not worth upgrading it past a certain point. I think 48 is where we're sitting pretty comfortably, but that's 348 meters, which really does work to get me from all the way from one corner of my base to another. So I'm going to run with that, and we're going to call that good enough for us. So with that, that leaves us a food factory and chaotic alchemy to kind of finish up this episode. I guess next we'll jump into a food factory because I think that's going to be relatively straightforward. So I've just kind of been eating pork chops because we get this nourishment buff from our buddy card medal we always wear, which is fantastic. Now at one point I was kind of planning on adding a bunch of different things together to make like the ultimate food, but it was just kind of complicated and not really worth it. So I think what instead we're going to do is just do hamburgers. So we could do golden carrots because it gives you just a ton of saturation. And I mean, the craft is dead simple, but I want to go a little bit more complex because I think it would be fun. So we're going to go with burgers, which means we need cabbage, onions, tomatoes, bread. So that's all crops. And then we also need beef patties, which are crafted by cutting up some beef. So that means that we need to automate raw beef, which means we need a cow farm. So we'll need a cow farm and then a relatively small crop field to automate hamburgers. So we're gonna kind of plan that out. I think we'll probably actually start up here in our little testing facility to kind of see how we're gonna first cut up our raw beef, which I believe can be automated using a deployer. Actually, I don't know if it can be. So I guess that's the first thing we're going to figure out is if it can be automated. If not, we'll probably have to pivot to a Farmer's Delight item that doesn't need that. So first, let me get our Farmer's Delight stuff together. And you know what? I don't need to go anywhere. I have my wireless crafting terminal. That's fantastic. Okay, that is the one problem. It is not a crafting grid, so we do have that issue. So I'll need to physically grab sticks and planks and a crafting table. and actually like craft the item out myself, but honestly, not that big of a deal. It's still easier than running all the way down to our train to get it done. So we can go ahead and do this. So we got that. The next thing we need is a knife, which we don't have, but that's pretty simple. It's just a stick and a ingot of your choice. So we'll just use a iron for now, and I believe the crafting recipe is something like this. There we go. Okay, so that gets us our knife. The last thing we need is some beef. Oh, and we do have some raw beef. Wonderful. And then I guess we'll also grab a deployer. So that way we can test out if this can be automated, because I would imagine that you could just place a deployer above it and automate it that way. So let's go ahead and try this out. So first we can place a beef and cut it with a knife, and I guess it just drops the beef. Now if we give the knife to the deployer, ooh, it doesn't work. Now what if we change it to a punch? Still doesn't work. So that's too bad. So I don't think we can automate it unless it's going one block too far. We may have to raise it by one. So we'll give that a go. We'll give it the knife again, and we'll try that. Oh, that does work. Okay, so that can be automated. Now instead of the knife, if we gave it the beef, would it place it? It would. Okay, so that totally can be automated. And can we? Now this brings up another question. If we can deploy from the side. So we could place the beef from the side and then cut it from the top. So we'll do that, 2 block gap, and then we'll place, I guess, the knife in this one, and we'll see if that works. Now, sadly, I only have one hand crank. Oh, we do have one more in our wireless terminal. Fantastic. So let's try that out. And I think that's too far. I think it would need to be here. Actually, we didn't right click the wrench to make it cut mode. Okay, so it does work from the side. So we can place our beef, and then we can cut our beef into patties, and the patties just fall that we can grab, and then we can cook those up. So this system should work pretty well. The next thing we just need to do is get some cows killed to actually get that automated, but that should all be pretty straightforward. So let me go find a nice spot for it. We'll dig a hole, and we'll start working on our farm. And taking a look at our base now, we're starting to kind of fill up. I mean, we're pretty much using every surface we can. And I think what I want is a skylight to kind of like going down into the farm. So I think up here is actually going to be probably our best bet. So I'm going to clear off all these trees, and we'll kind of dig into the mountain, and that'll kind of determine the shape of our little farm. So I'll get that dug out and start laying out where we're going to put stuff. And with that, we've got a nice little space dug out here for our farm. So we've got 4 along from the edge all the way around. I figured we could use a minecart contraption to harvest that up. Then in the center, we have room for all of our logistics and a small cow farm. We really don't need anything big because we don't eat very often. But I think this is going to do us pretty well. So the next step is I'm going to install a rail all the way along the edge. Once I've done that, I'll build a minecart contraption and then bring you guys back in when it's time to build up our cow farm and the logistics for actually putting together our burgers. So without any further ado, let me get started. And actually, I do want to just say this thing is amazing. Being able to access my inventory for building and also just clearing out my inventory of junk as I mined this out has been incredible. So highly, highly recommend a wireless terminal. All right, so we now have our rail and car contraption installed. So this little guy just goes around harvesting the crops and comes back to here to drop them off. Now for our extraction system, I think we're gonna go real simple. So I have a drawer controller there, and place a chute above that to pull items into it. Then if I just do an oak trim there, and then 4 of these half drawers, each with 2 spots in them, then when this comes back around, it should fill up each spot because we have our 4 different crops: cabbage, onion, tomato, and then wheat to make bread. So that'll be a real easy system just to kind of get that filled up. And I guess we'll also do an oak trim there just so it looks nice. But that part is complete. The next step is we need to process down our wheat into bread. And just because I don't want to have 3 wheat planted for each one of the other crops, I think we are going to go through the process of crafting up our dough from create by by washing wheat flour, which we get by crushing wheat. and that will get us our bread here in this recipe. So that's relatively straightforward. The other ones we're just going to use as is. We could cut our cabbage to get essentially double, but we really don't need to at the quantities we're doing. So we have our onions, tomato, cabbage done. Bread is going to be pretty simple, and then it'll be on to beef. But let's go ahead and get our crush, wash, cook system set up for our bread. With that, I think we're actually ready to start fully automating our burgers. So for our crop farm, I ended up just pulling out here with a little fan and chute contraption to pull all of our stuff out. And our farm's been working absolutely beautifully, by the way. It comes through here into our sorting system, so we can have each of our 3 crops coming in. And with our wheat, we're pumping out in 2 different spots. So we have a split tunnel at the end. So half the wheat goes here and half the wheat goes here. Half of it gets crushed, washed, and then down below it gets smelted and turned into bread. And the other half comes all the way over here to our cow farm. So the cow farm is a similar design to kind of ones I've used before. We've got a little breeding system. So when the cows are ready to breed, the babies come off the side and then into this little fan contraption. And this is specifically dialed in at -87, which puts them just high enough where the babies can sit, but when they grow, they get hit by a deployer. Now, the reason we're using deployer instead of a lava fan is we don't want to cook the meat yet, because this vacuumulator is going to pick up any beef that drops. So if I drop this here, you see this will pick it up, where we have 2 sets of arms that have a knife, and every once in a while, whenever there's beef, it'll place the beef, cut the beef into patties. Then this vacuumulator sucks it up, drops the patties onto this fire, where they get cooked up into our cooked patties, and then stored in this drawer. So with our bread, 3 different crops, and our patties, we can go ahead and drop these all in the basin. So I'm going to set each of these to take, like so. And then we want to deposit into basin. So that'll start cooking away. And then the last step, place down our mixer. And that should mix up into our burgers. And looks like this belt is backwards. So let me fix that quick. And once we do, we'll then be pulling out our burgers. Okay, so I filtered this out. What was happening is it was actually taking our cabbage and mixing it up into cabbage leaves by accident. So what I did is I made a first burger, put it onto our filter here. So now what I can do is I can grab our mixer again, drop it right here. That should mix up our burger, and the arm is going to keep it filled. Sweet. So with that, that'll just keep mixing up burgers forever, and we'll just have infinite food. So the last step is just going to be to decorate this place, make it look all nice, and actually connect it down to the rest of our factory. So now that we have our food farm done, we're now going to jump into chaotic alchemy. So essentially the way this is all going to work is we have these different reagents that can be crafted up by using the initial ingredient at first. So we can take our gabbro cobblestone and make a gabbro reagent with the end goal of getting this catalyst, which we can then use to essentially automate a whole bunch of different things. So you can see with diorite, if we take 2 sapphire and 1 lead, we get 20 diorite. So it'll be a kind of helpful way of going ahead and having a new way to farm all of these different reagents. And all of this does have the end goal of making silicone reagent, which obviously we've already automated. However, I think it'll still be a fun process to go through all of these. And also, I think it's just important to go through the process for the completion of the mod pack. So to craft up your reagents, you need this fluid encapsulator and you need molten glass. So what I've done is I have a magna crucible that's just melting a bunch of the sand down into our molten glass. And I can go ahead and put a item in here. And once I do put my item in there, it'll turn into the reagent, which is a block that we can actually place down in our world and also just kind of collect up and have. Then once we have that, there's the reagent extractor, which will take that reagent and extract out the material, which at this stage is not very helpful because we're just going to get that same andesite cobblestone back. But once we actually get through further down into the pack and we're turning reagents into different reagents, that's how we actually get our item out at the end. So our first step is going to be to craft up every single one of these reagents. I'm going to get a little laboratory set up right out through here. Figured this was as good a place as any, kind of right by our little testing facility. We'll collect these all and then kind of figure out how we're going to combine them and what we need to do to get our catalysts. Alright, so that gets us about halfway through of crafting up at least one of each of these reagents. So all I've been doing is going through each one of these, seeing what they actually take to make, and grabbing that out of our system. And sadly, it looks like we ran into one I don't have. I have had that happen a few different times. But I've just been going through, finding them, and throwing them in our fluid encapsulator here, and slowly filling it out. Now, we don't need to have them all laid out like this, but it looks pretty cool in here. So I figured it would look pretty cool actually laid out in our world. So we're halfway through. I'm going to go ahead and finish all these up, clean up the room a little bit, and then we can start working on getting all of our catalysts together. Alright, so I now have at least one of each one of these reagents all crafted up, and we're ready to start working on our catalysts. So essentially, the way this is going to work is we're going to use this alchemical laser setup, and we need to fill the first 4 slots of the hopper with our reagent, and it can be any combination of any of the reagents in the specific column. So first, I'm just going to do 4 andesite reagents, and we're going to see what we get. So we get this mundane alchemical blend. So what this is telling us is we have andesite, 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 andesite. And this can be any combination of all of these items. Now, what we're going to learn is we're going to yield different items from our result. So ash means it's incorrect. Redstone means it's a correct ingredient in a wrong slot. And glowstone means it's a correct ingredient in a correct slot. So I'm going to put this in our centrifugal separator. And for that combination, we have 2 glowstone and 2 ash. So now I know for sure that at least 2 of our slots are andesite and 2 of them are something else. Now I don't know which specific slots are andesite. I can dial that in now. But I think the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what the other 2 items are. So I'm just going to go through here, do 4 diorite, see what we get, do 4 of whatever's next, and kind of just work down the list until I know exactly what I need. So I know for sure I need at least 2 andesite, and now I can test diorite. And this is going to tell me I got 4 ash, which means there is no diorite in our recipe. And next we're going to test up granite. And while that guy is cooking away, we're going to go ahead and get our stone going. We have no granite. After stone is going to be our basalt. So we're going to swap these guys, get our stone cooking in there, hit our basalt there. And then our last one is going to be this gabbro. So we're going to grab our basalt out of here, throw our gabbro in there. Now we know we have no stone. We're going to test up our basalt. Okay, and we have no basalt, so that means that the other 2 items are going to be gabbro. So we should see 2 glowstone in here and 2 ash, meaning that we need gabbro and andesite to craft up our item. And there we go. So we got our 2 glowstone and 2 ash, which means we have 2 andesite and 2 gabbro. I'm just going to actually grab all of both of these so we can go ahead and just kind of play around with it until we get it all figured out. So first I'll try 2 and 2, and we'll see what we get. Okay, so that's still mundane. So that wasn't quite the right solution. So now what I'm going to do is we're just going to try 1 there, and then our gabbro there. So we're going to try this recipe and see what we get out of here, which is still mundane, so that's not what we wanted. Okay, so 2 of these were correct in that first try. So now this is going to tell us a little bit more information. So if 2 of these are still correct, that means gabbro's here and andesite is here. If not, then we have to mix these up a little bit. Okay, so 2 were still correct and 2 were wrong. So I think what that means is the only ones that were the same was this andesite here and the gabbro here, and these two switched places. So I think that means... What does that mean? Okay, I think I should be able to puzzle it out from here, but I can't quite figure it out. So the last thing I'm going to try is, we did andesite, andesite, gabbro, gabbro before. So now I'm going to do gabbro, gabbro, andesite, andesite. And I'm also going to get more of these reagents going, because I know we're going to need quite a bit to get our catalyst anyway. Okay, so that's still mundane. So we will process this down and see how many are correct there. And this one was 2 gabbro and then 2 andesite. And that was also 2 correct, but in the wrong spot. And you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to grab this basalt reagent, because I know it's not actually being used. And I'm going to use that to essentially black out 2 spots. So we're going to get ash instead of redstone. So this will actually tell me exactly where the andesite needs to go. So when I do this, andesite, andesite, basalt, basalt, and I react this down. So andesite in the first 2 slots is going to get me 1 glowstone, 2 ash, and 1 redstone. So I know one of these slots is for sure correct and one needs to be moved. So now what I can do is we'll try andesite in the first and third slot, and then fill the rest up with our basalt. Process this guy down. All right, and that got me 1 glowstone and 1 redstone. So I know for sure, because we didn't move this and we still have 1 glowstone, our first slot is andesite, and we can tell that our last slot is also andesite because we have redstone, which means this still needs to be moved. So we know for sure, based on that test, that our first and last slots are andesite, which means the middle 2 are gabbro. And I honestly, I think we were pretty close to just guessing it before, because I think that's the only recipe I haven't tried yet. I thought that would be correct, but it looks like we're still getting our alchemical blend. So let's process that down and see what it gives us. 4 redstone. That does not make sense. Unless it was 2 andesite in the middle and 2 gabbro on the outside, and this first one wasn't correct. The second and third ones are. There we go. There's our igneous catalyst. Sweet. So it is kind of a weird little puzzle to actually figure this out. But once you do, you can basically take infinite of your items and just kind of duplicate them out. So now that I know what our recipe is, I can put these in here and then just kind of have this crank away and get us tons of the catalyst. And actually we can only do 1 at a time, it looks like, which isn't a big deal because the catalysts are recycled, but sweet. So there is our recipe for our igneous catalyst. So I'm going to drop 1 of these in the barrel, and then I'm also going to put our recipe in here so we have that for later. And I'm not going to make you guys sit with me while I go through the rest of these. I'm just going to go ahead and research down every single one of these different categories, get our other 5 catalysts, and then bring you guys back in when we start working on combining them and working our way through the rest of the chaotic alchemy. And we now have all of our catalysts all crafted up, and that wasn't too bad of a process. Once I kind of got a rhythm down, they really did come together quite well, and we have all of our recipes put together. Now, our next step is to get the final code. So we have to take the 6 we just unlocked and use them to craft the chaos catalyst, which is made from a combination of these 6 items. So I'm going to go ahead and get this crafted up so that way we have our chaos catalyst. But first we need to craft up a bunch more of these catalysts because I only have 1 extra of each, and I'll also kind of walk you through my kind of streamlined process of going through our zap and separate process to kind of zone in exactly what our recipe is going to be. All right, so I've gone ahead and crafted up a few of these. I'm a little worried about these ones where I only got 7, but hopefully it's going to be enough. So to actually get this going, a combination of 4 of any of these is going to get us our final result. So the way I'm going to start is with 4 of each of these, which is always going to get us our mundane result. And we can process that down to see what our final result of that mundane is. So we can see with 4 of these igneous catalysts, we're going to get 3 ash and 1 glowstone, which means we need at least 1 igneous catalyst in our recipe. So now I'm just going to repeat that with our herbal. And as that is separating down, I'm going to go ahead and get the next one zapped over here and then collect my herbal. So I can see, oh, we got so lucky. Okay, so 3 glowstone means that 3 of the 4 are herbal and 1 is igneous. So the rest of these we can just keep. We don't even need to actually process them down, because if I put the alchemical blend in here, we will just see 4 ash for every single one of these. And yep, we just got 4 ash of our volatile catalyst, so we know that it's 3 herbal and 1 igneous. And honestly, for this, all we have to do is figure out where this igneous is going to go. So I'm just going to start it in slot 1. If that's not right, go slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, until we get it figured out. But there it is, slot 1. Oh, God, we got so lucky with that one. So our final recipe is igneous, herbal, 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 and that gets us our chaos catalyst. So now for actually using the chaos catalyst, essentially all we're going to do is throw it in our minecart with Hopper, and then take any other of our reagents, drop it in there, and zap it. And our reagent is going to change. So we just put andesite in, and it changed to a diorite reagent. And our diorite reagent is going to change back into an andesite reagent. Now, the really interesting thing about this is unique per seed. So we could get really lucky and be able to turn cheap stuff into more expensive stuff. So if I put nether quartz in here, that's going to change into nickel. And we can see that nether quartz is over here and our nickel is over here. So it's not even just in each group. Anything can become anything. So I might go through here and just kind of figure out what each of these turn into and see if any of these are really helpful. Like, can we turn flowers into diamonds? It's certainly possible. So I'm going to go through here, figure out all of those. And the other really cool thing is one of these is going to turn itself into silicone, which is another potential automation way. We already have our line figured out, but it will be cool to have another way to get silicone if we ever really need to. Oh, and I already found a really useful one. Fuchsia reagent, which is crafted from a lilac, which is super easy to automate, turns into ruby. So we throw a ton of these in here. We can zap them and turn them into ruby, which we can then turn into our dust and compact it, and then sell that ruby for 10 silver coins each. So infinite money is going to be super easy with this. This is so cool. All right, so I have gone and found every single pair of material and kind of just laid them out here so we can review this in the future if we ever need an item that we know that we can make out of this reagent. So the first one we already talked about, fuchsia into ruby, super helpful for coins. We also have olive into sapphire, which is really helpful for coins. And diamonds we can actually make from azure reagent, which is super, super helpful because this is just crafted with flowers, which can be duplicated. So that's sweet. Another really helpful one is the nether reagent can be turned into blazing reagent, which is quite a helpful thing. We don't need to hunt down blaze anymore. We can just turn our nether stuff into blaze. And then the other really helpful one is nickel can be turned into nether quartz, so we don't have to go and mine nether quartz anymore, which is pretty sweet. So some really helpful recipes here. And I did find our silicone reagent. So sulfuric acid turns into silicone. The interesting thing about that is we actually have 2 ways we could technically automate it. First is purchasing it with coins. We can buy 4 sulfur for 8 coins, which is, I mean, that's pretty good. That means each silicone is only 2 coins, which is pretty darn cheap. However, we already have our silicone automation in our factory, so I think what we're going to do is just go ahead and check this off, even though we're not actually automating it. And we're going to go ahead and check this off, which should unlock the last bit of stuff in here. Yep, so secrets uncovered. We can go grab a silicone and check this off. Well, actually, you know what? We may as well grab a sulfuric acid and extract the... Oh, right. First, we need to convert it. So we're going to drop it in here with our chaos catalyst. punch the zapper. And I have noticed that some of these aren't 100%, like you don't get your item every time. So we'll just throw a few, and of course there we got all 4. But I can drop that in a reagent extractor and pull out our silicone. And now we have completed chapter 4. Now for the last thing, what I'm going to do in our little alchemy lab is I'm going to decorate this little building, which I think is going to look really nice kind of sticking out the side of this mountain here. And to end this video, we're going to close it off with some buddy cards. So I did actually find out that we actually had every single buddy card already unlocked, at least for like getting the percentage. So our power unlocked is now at 100%. All I had to do was drop all the cards and pick them back up. I guess there's a bug where we didn't actually like claim the cards or whatever, but we are now at 100% on all of our armor. And we're also very, very close on getting all of our buddy card sets complete. All of these sets are fully complete. So that is our Create, Nether, Farmer's Delight, Aquaculture, and Base set. The last 2 sets that I have some spots are the BYG set and the End set, are both missing only 2 cards. Now because we're missing BYG sets, our only way to get those are through mystery packs, which we can purchase on the market. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 2 whole stacks of gold coins on cards. We're going to open them all up, and hopefully we can fill in our 2 final spots in our packs. So without any further ado, let's get to buying cards, and I'll get to sorting them out. And after 2 whole stacks of gold, which gave us an entire stack of mystery packs, we did end up completing our entire end set, both shiny and not shiny. And for our BYG set, we're missing a single card. We have 25, and we just got 2 of the 26s, but we never got our card 27. So a single BYG card is missing, so we're not done with our buddy cards yet. But in the next episode, I promise you, we will be completing every single one of our buddy card sets. Now, I do want to address what our plans are with the rest of this series. So I did decide to just make one big episode going through Chapter 3, Chapter 4, and there'll be one final episode where we're going to go through Divide by Digital, as well as Spacefarer. And that's just because I kind of want to close out this series for a number of reasons. First, our frame rate is kind of dropping a little bit in this world, so you can see we're hovering right around 30, and in parts of my base it drops quite a bit lower. And also, we're stuck on Minecraft 1.16.5, so a lot of new features and new mods we can't actually play with in this world, and that's kind of too bad because there are a lot of really neat create features that we're missing out here. Namely, trains. I really want to have a really cool train infrastructure, and that's just not possible on this version of the Create mod. So we're going to have one more episode of Above and Beyond, but after that I am going to be continuing on with a survival series that I've been planning for a long time and should be a whole lot of fun. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Make sure you're subscribed to see that final episode of the series, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.